to another episode of Let's Talk Film. Today I'm standing on the spacious balcony which connects to the studio and gallery of British photographer Benjamin Oliver. This view looks out onto Canal Street, one of the busiest and bustling streets of Lower Manhattan. It is also a major thoroughfare where to the west we connect to New Jersey via the Holland Tunnel, and to the east we can take a quick trip to Brooklyn via the Manhattan Bridge. Canal Street also intersects and connects numerous downtown neighborhoods. Chinatown, Little Italy, Tribeca, and Soho all have boundaries that begin and end along this street. During the day, it's a shopper's delight filled with assertive street vendors and storefronts offering all types of merchandise, from clothing and accessories to industrial hardware supplies and endless souvenirs. But once the sun sets, the bright lights of the taxis and automobiles flow with the nonstop rhythm of downtown nightlife. And out of sight of all of this, in this very cool studio and gallery of Benjamin Oliver, we're going to have our show. Let's go inside. So, Benjamin Oliver,
Correct.
Photographer.
Correct.
Please tell us where you're from and how you came to New York.
I'm from sunny London. How did I come to New York, or why did I come to New York?
Why did you come to New York?
It seemed like a good idea at the time, actually. New York, when I came here, was the inception of hip-hop, graffiti art, etc., etc. So it seemed like a very artistic place to go.
Indeed.
So I jumped on a plane.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about your photography? What is your focus? What's your specialty?
It depends entirely upon what it is that one's wishing to convey. So, for instance, if you're shooting a beauty shot, it would be very different if you're shooting a still life. But it depends what it is one needs to tell the story. So, ideally, I like to mix up several different subject matters to tell the same story.
Oh, wow. And usually, is there a continuous theme throughout all of your artwork?
Yeah, I think essentially if any artist doing something or other, there's a magic line that runs through the whole thing, just because you're the one that's doing it. So, as in, say, architecture or industrial design, if you've got one person's point of view, you'll see that, it'll run through it. That's the thing that basically pulls all those disparate elements together.
Indeed. And can you tell us a little bit more about the city? I mean, you came to New York City. The city is very popular for its art. What inspires you within this city?
It's very energetic, and there is... I mean, it's changed a lot, but there is an energy here, and there's which can be negative or positive, but it is an energy, and also it's somewhere where nothing is impossible. So you can have some ridiculous idea, and everybody isn't going to go, "Oh, what a complete waste of time that is." There's always a chance it'll work, and I think generally speaking, people are positive. So if you've got an idea you want to do something, other people say, "Yeah, sure, let's do it," which I like.
You feature artists within your space here. Can you just tell us a little bit about who you're featuring this month?
Yes, this show is by a good friend of mine called Dina White, and it's the name of the show is In the Red, which is, think about it economically, is very topical. And also, A, I like it, and B, I think it's always good for artists to help and promote and sponsor other artists.
So where can viewers find your work? If we want to follow you, if we want to keep updated on what you're doing, projects you're working on, where can we find you and your work?
You can find me and my work on my website, which is benjaminoliver.com.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for this interview, and let's go meet the panelists.
We haven't even finished our tea yet. I
And
Cheers. 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 Thank you. Cheers.
To my left, I have Irina Lazenby. To my far right, we have Jamila Alston. Hello. And to my near right, we have Karen Jensen. And today we're going to be discussing Nicolas Winding Refn's film, Drive. Now we get introduced to this character, Driver. He doesn't actually have a name, and if you look in the credits, it says Driver is his name. I definitely thought he was quite robotic, and it was just like so robotic and so mechanical, kind of like a car. He's made of these parts, and they kind of accelerate when they're supposed to accelerate, when you kind of ignite the gas, or you kind of pump the engine or something. I'm not really good with cars, obviously. He gets ignited at certain points. He really revs up, or he can be kind of docile, kind of chill, kind of well-oiled. What did you think?
Well, because I believe the car is an extension of who he is. And because we don't get that backstory, we don't really know the past that makes him the person he is. So I saw him as a loner.
Yes.
But I thought that the story was basically being told, especially in the racing scenes. That was where you got to see who he was, and it was shot so that you saw the solitary man that was on this mission. And so not knowing the backstory, no, we didn't get the backstory in terms of why is he that way, but he was consistent.
Yes.
And then you would periodically get the glimpse of emotion when he was relating to Mulligan.
Yes.
Okay, but I felt that you got a good sense of who he was, and that was who he was. And then at the same time, they're developing it, like at the end, they talk about him as a hero. So it's almost like Batman and all the other action stories.
The Dark Knight. I actually really thought The Dark Knight.
Where you have this person who doesn't really talk, you don't know that sense of his background, but he's on this mission.
Yeah, it's kind of like the hero, how do you call it, the non-textbook definition of a hero, essentially, because he is this man who he's a driver, a mechanic, stuntman, but he also is the getaway driver for thieves and criminals. Right. And although he has his rules, although he has his setup, the idea is who is he really, helping?
No, I mean, I thought it was such a noble attempt to do that. To not give a backstory, to just have this character be who he is and just demonstrate it, theatricalize it, and not tell the story. And I didn't think it worked in the end. In the end, I felt lost. Where does this stoicism come from? And if he's so stoic, and where does this violence come from? And this ability, this fighting, and this ability to kind of attack people and like a superhero, it's just, I don't know. I just felt like there were so many different places where it could have tied up nicely and didn't.
It's a very romantic film, even though it's very, it's violent. I think the thing with him being a hero and how his character is drawn is that it does abide by basic noir principles, one of which being that the story isn't told through the character, it's told through the shadows of the character, and it's about the world that they're in, and a lot of times you don't get the explanation about how they are, who they are, how they became who they became, and you don't have the satisfaction of like a really intimate relationship with them. But I think it's like real life. You don't have satisfaction. Things aren't explained to you in real life either. And how many, especially living in New York, you interact with so many people for whom you never get to really know their story. And there's so many, it's a lot of mysteries in the city. And it's very realistic to me. I mean, in real life, you have a lot of silent moments. There's a lot of not really ever getting to know someone. And in that sense, I think the film just does what it does, which is it tells you a story. And just like real life, you have to figure out some things for yourself, and you have to let it have mystery.
That's the thing. I always feel like with film, there's a certain amount of accepting of information that you have to do, because in life, there's a certain amount of accepting that you just have to do. You're not going to really be given the satisfaction of everything you need to make the decisions or choices or understandings that you want necessarily.
And to just be able to let the movie sink in and get caught up in the scenery and the music and actually look at the actors for more than a half second is really, really nice. It's it's very classic to me.
But that's why I was disappointed about where it went, because it felt like so many fuses were ignited at the beginning. You had all of these emotional tracks, and you didn't know that much about him yet.
Yes.
And I was so looking forward to finding out about him through all these little storylines that had been, set into motion. And then in the end, you didn't. What they had was so good. It was so nuanced. It was so quiet, and there was so much room. When you're still, there's room to go any direction, like you're saying. You know, you can really jolt somebody.
Yeah.
And they were still, and that's very difficult to do. So I just was disappointed that it didn't use that in the end. It's almost like that part wasn't really necessary.
So overall, we feel like the lack of backstory was effective for this kind of film.
And plus, I
And
mean,
you didn't feel like you were lacking anything.
right, it wasn't lacking, but also the lack of backstory. If the public likes the film, it does well financially, then that sets up for a sequel.
I think so.
That's how most sequels come about, because
Do you-
there's a lack of something that has to be further
Right.
explained.
Oh, I sense prequel.
You know, yes, so you get a lot, you know, you can get sequel or prequels.
God, I hope not.
I don't think that you need it. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was a prequel or a sequel. I really wouldn't like it, but
Yeah,
you know, but
such a money-making thing to do. It's like, oh.
I really liked that. I like that it's left. It's not tied up in a knot. They're tied up in a bow.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. This has been an integral and interesting discussion. I hope people are able to make a coherent choice on whether or not they choose to see this film. This has been another episode of Let's Talk Film. I just want to take a moment and thank you all for joining us for this discussion. Thank you to our panelists who offered their ideas. Thank you so much to Benjamin Oliver, photographer, for letting us use his studio space. I'm your host, Stephanie Aline. Keep watching and keep talking film.